Welcome back to the Mental Health Toolbox Podcast. I'm Patrick Martin, your host. I'm so glad you're listening in today. I'm here to teach you skills to improve your mind, emotions, and your behavior so you can do more than cope, but thrive and improve your quality of life. So a lot's been going on since I posted the last episode. This is episode 8, and we've been covering the fundamental skills of cognitive behavioral therapy and managing specifically depression, but also anxiety. And I want to check in with you and do a quick update on what's been going on in my world and why there's been a lapse in episodes over the last few weeks, a little bit, kind of a little break. As you know, my daughters are in Girl Scouts, so that was a busy cookie season, and that was really fun. We finished, a great cookie season year and met our troop goal, and my girls met their goal, so of course that kept us pretty busy. And just as that came to a close, we had the onset of the COVID-19, as I'm sure all of you are aware, and we are in about, 10 days in to the isolation right now, which, we'll get more into, in terms of how we cope with that. Since we are talking about coping skills, I think that's important. But I've also been working on my telehealth practice, so that's been keeping me pretty busy, and no better time to work from home. And on the same note, my full-time employer has been letting me work from home, so I'm very fortunate and blessed in that respect, and I'm glad that I can still be of service, even though it's not in the traditional sense. I also completed a Skype interview recently with a Dr. Lori Watley, and she is a renowned speaker and author, expert on the impact of technology, social media devices on families and business. And so I just completed a really nice interview with her, very informative and very interesting. So I will be posting that. That'll be episode 13 that rolls out here within a few weeks probably. And I will also put that up on the YouTube channel, by same name, the Mental Health Toolbox. So definitely check that out. I also post the podcasts up on YouTube as well. But I have every intention of rolling out some tutorials and videos and other useful information because I'm very visual, and so I really appreciate that, having a visual platform to learn things. I'm actually working on a tutorial for how to find therapy and the different directories, because it's not always obvious and there's more than one resource. And so I just kind of want to do a tutorial to walk everyone through their options on that in case they ever need that or want to share it or know somebody that might be interested. I think it's good knowledge. Okay. I also am looking at creating some online courses through Teachable. And what I would like from you, my audience, is if you could let me know via my contact form that I put into the show notes if there's any specific topics of interest that you would like to kind of deep dive into, or that you'd like a formal course on or tutorial, so I can start creating some content, calendars around that, so that when I know how to prioritize for you, since I'm doing this to be of service for you, and I want to be able to provide the most meaningful content. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and jump into episode 8, and we'll continue with the fundamental skills. All right? But first, the intro.
Welcome to the Mental Health Toolbox Podcast, where you will gain the knowledge to thrive. Here is your host, licensed psychotherapist, Patrick Martin.
Okay, welcome back. And so today we'll be discussing step 8 of 12 in terms of the fundamental coping skills for depression. And specifically, we'll be talking about how to leverage healthy activities in order to increase our goal-oriented behavior, right? Because if you remember, it's really important to do things on purpose and for a purpose, right? To live with intention. You've probably heard that a lot, but we're going to dive a little more into what that actually looks like, okay? And so in the spirit of that, we'll be talking about 4 different main topics. We'll be talking about, first of all, the importance of maintaining constant or consistent goals, right? Always having a target in front of us. We'll be talking about exploring our ideals for the future. So again, that kind of as much as possible, that HD crystal clear vision, right? You've maybe heard of a vision board, right? We think about what we want our life to look like in 5, 10, 20, 30 years in the future, right? Being able to project our goals without really future tripping, but more from a dreaming standpoint. A dream, a vision, but then we put some meat and bones on it and we work backwards. We're also going to look at why we need long and short-term goals, right? That are in agreement with each other, all right? And not working against each other. And we're also going to talk about planning to reach out in ways that allow us to touch base and get traction in our short-term goals. So oftentimes when we talk about goal planning, we have ideas, but when it comes to really operationalizing those goals, we have a little bit of difficulty with the life application. So we're going to talk about that. Okay, so let's get started. So definitely want to talk about the importance of maintaining constant goals, right? So there's a subtle difference between inspiration and motivation, right? Because inspiration is really akin to infatuation, right? It's kind of like we get really excited about an idea until we start to see the hurdles, and then it's easy to kind of lose our steam. It'll drive us to make a start, but we often give up when the real work, such as investment and sacrifice, begin. This is a primary issue, especially with depression, which lends toward the misconception that motivation precedes productivity, right? I'll say that again. It's a misconception that motivation precedes productivity. It's really quite to the contrary. Motivation is born out of productivity. We know that depression depletes our sense of motivation, right? And with it, our notion of purpose. As we begin to make traction in recovery, we regain some of our energy, right? I mean, those small wins we talk about. It's really important to be able to see our goals come into fruition. If we have not thought out our goals in some fashion, then our periods of the motivation that we do get are a risk of being lost to points of indecision, analysis paralysis, right? Because it takes a lot of energy to postulate our goals and figure out what it is that we want to do, let alone being able to do things spontaneously. That doesn't really work out too well, especially when we're depressed, because we never know how much energy we're going to wake up with. And being able to have something already in writing that outlines our opportunities and options, we're a lot more likely to take action because our mental energy is not being expended on trying to pull out of thin air ideas in the spur of the moment, which really isn't practical for anybody. I'm a big list guy, not because I'm an extreme type A, but just because I'm very out of sight, out of mind. So it's really helpful for me to be able to pull up a list off of my Google Keep Notes, to-do lists and ideas, or if I have an idea that pops in my head at random, when I'm in the shower, that I can quickly jot that down on one of my sticky notes on my phone, right? So I cannot emphasize enough the importance of striking while the iron is hot. And in order to do that, we need a sense of direction before the motivation kicks in. So really, goals are important because they provide us with a vehicle that allows us to structure our energy. It gives us a focal point to inform our priorities, and it's actually acting like a litmus test for our value-based behavior, all of which work or orchestrated together and work in conjunction to contribute to our sense of meaning and purpose. If you have a sense of goals already identified, it's really a good time to determine your order of business or to prioritize those goals, right? Because it's easy to toggle between them as we feel motivated and pulled in different directions. We're inspired across different things, and there's nothing wrong with being inspired, but we want to make sure that we finish what we start, or at least get enough traction that we have stepped beyond the learning curve so that when we circle back to it, it's not so hard to press go again, right? And if you find yourself struggling to come up with some meaningful goals, consider your value system and your morals, right? Your guiding compass. Because the life domains that we spoke about earlier in the series all have their own many values and value systems. And those are the things that drive our wants and needs. And it's good to be aware of that. And because we can use that to our advantage. Like this whole episode is about leveraging those things in order to move our life toward the things that we want. But first we have to know what our wants are and needs are and why we have those wants and needs and where they come from. And these generally speak to beliefs around family, work ethic, altruism, spirituality, economics, health, and learning. Okay? I would caution you to something though, because while some goals may seem well intentioned, they can also be counterproductive. And these types of goals revolve around these kind of skewed motives or unrealistic expectations, such as being perfect or seeking approval from others at the cost of personal needs, or violation of personal boundaries or the lack thereof. It can also it can also result in you imposing your goals on others, right? As it's known as the righting reflex, right? And also setting goals out of a sense of obligation or guilt, right? As a way to, meaning the motivation is coming externally. It's an expectation of somebody else or in an effort to gain somebody else's validation, which is intrinsically tied to your own self-worth or your identity. So we have to be careful with that. It's important for your goals to come from within and from your value system, okay? So to summarize, your goals are informed by your values, and goals have a defined purpose that are in line with those values. Okay? All right, moving on. Next, I'm going to speak to the idea that we need to explore our ideals for the future. Okay? So even though you and I may not feel motivated initially when we're setting out to do something, making strides toward our goals will help improve our mood, okay? And this is accomplished in seeing small gains along the way, right? It's the same reason if you ever listen to Dave Ramsey, he says it's really important not to list your debts in order of interest rates, right? Lowest to highest or highest to lowest, but your debts from lowest to highest, and attack the small ones first. Because even though, fiscally it may not make the most sense because you want to pay off the highest interest ones first, right? But it's that emotional trigger, when we hit pay off the small debts, then we get that burst of motivation because we see the outcome, right? It's that token economy, that reward system. That's why it worked so good in kids, right? The marshmallow experiment. If you've never heard of that, check that out. It's really interesting and what drives behavior and impulse control. So it's the ability to put off pleasure only goes so far. The sooner we see the outcomes of our efforts, the more likely we are to continue with our behavior in a positive trend. Okay. So the more that you see the product of your effort come to fruition, the easier it is to keep your momentum as you learn how to fight depression or anxiety or anything else that's dragging you down. And given that long-term goals are generally audacious, right? Big, hairy, audacious goals, they are generally projected at least a year out. Okay, so they're not just big, they're usually a year plus, right? Because it takes time to do things that really move the needle in our life. Things don't change overnight just because, we decide to get sober. We've been using for 20 years and we get sober, or we have been depressed for, a decade and finally decide to get help. It doesn't mean that we're going to clean up our life, in 2 therapy sessions or in 6 months of sobriety. It takes time, or if you just started going back to school, it takes time to hit these goals because anything worth doing is going to take an investment. And a year is a long time to wait to see positive outcomes, right? And so that's why small gains are so important. It's imperative that we string our short-term goals together in a fashion that both speaks to our long-term goals and also our various life domains, which we discussed earlier, such as self-care, learning/education, meaningful activities, and things that attend to our relationships, those interpersonal meaningful relationships. Okay. So now we'll move on to why we need long and short-term goals that are in agreement. Okay. Long-term and short-term goals work in concert together. They facilitate the quality of life that you idealize in your mind's eye so that you can then put it into practice in your behavior. Everything is created twice. First in your thoughts, then in your actions. As Stephen Covey said in his work, In the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we want to begin with the end in mind. So we start with the long-term goals, the things we can identify that we really want to strive toward, and understanding that those goals are going to shift. What we want is going to change. That target is going to morph into something else, but that's okay because it gives us the structure that moves us in a specific direction. It's like that saying, we aim for the moon, we land among the stars, right? That's where that comes from. And so first, if we start with a long-term goal, and not just any goal, but an audacious one, that is far enough out of our comfort zone that it scares us just a little bit. It's really important. Not the delusional zone, right? But enough that it pushes and challenges our sense of adequacy, even, or capability. Like, what? Like, can I really do that? Is that something I can really attain? So that if you start to notice those negative thoughts creep up, that means you're onto something. If you start to feel afraid, that means you're onto something. You're probably in the right territory when it comes to goal setting. Okay. And getting comfortable with your being outside your comfort zone is a vital lesson in how to fight not just depression, but in how to do life, right? To be comfortable being uncomfortable. Really, really important. Okay, and this brings us to our 4th point for this episode and this principle. Planning tasks to reach our short-term goals, right, is vital. And since we are indeed working backwards from our long-term goals, it's really imperative that we have as crystal clear HD vision of what it is that we want to accomplish. And it's not likely to, you're not likely to have an epiphany and be like, oh yes, this is exactly what I want my life to look like, or this is exactly what I want to do the rest of my life or for my career. No, it requires a starting point, but then we, jump off from that and then we explore. And this is why research is really, really, really helpful. And I encourage a lot of my clients, especially when they're recreating themselves and starting over, I encourage them to use the tools that are available to really broaden their perspective. For example, if somebody wants to go back to school and they don't know what they want to do, rather than just signing up for some private trade school, I really implore them to go to the Occupational Outlook Handbook. If you just go to Google and type OOH, I call it the OO, it's just a wealth of information. You can jump on there and you can see all the statistics. It's run by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but just phenomenal information about all the different opportunities and jobs and the level of education, the level of income, the median, the job growth, which informs you how likely you are to get a job, after you finish with that degree. And you can also look by region, by state, by region, to see what your prospects are. So it's really fascinating because you may not know the difference between, for example, a dental assistant and a dental hygienist. Well, you may not know a dental hygienist has the same level of education, more or less, time-wise, but they make substantially more. They make, I think upward, up to 80 grand, with a 2-ish year degree. So, whereas a dental assistant makes a fraction of that. So it's really important to understand what your options are so you can make informed decisions. So even though you may not know specifically what you want to do, it gives you a direction to head. And you'll find that when you set a long-term goal, that a lot of the short initial steps toward that long-term goal are the same once you have a general idea. And so you don't have to have anything written in stone on the front end. As you get closer to, the halfway point, then you can really start to reassess whether that's something you want to definitely follow through on or if you need to tweak something. Okay. When working with my therapy clients, I usually start out the initial session with this question. What do you want to see different in your life 1 to 5 years from now? And I usually have to push my clients to frame their goals in definitive terms, as the pull for most people is to talk in general, ambiguous terms. I want to be happy. I want to be independent. Or I want a full-time job. Well, those, you know, are fine goals, but what do they really mean? What does that look like in your life? What are the implications? I also have them frame their goals in terms of what they want to add to their life, not remove or avoid. Again, think in terms of value, right? As Dave Ramsey would say, I want them to run to something, not away from something. Okay. So also understand that change occurs in proxy, meaning that you are much more likely to quit something as a secondary decision after adding something beneficial. For example, if you want to quit smoking, focus on other health goals, such as lowering your cholesterol, working vegetables into your diet, increasing your exercise, or any other known factor to move you closer to your health goal. And once you see the progress or the habit of smoking, or the benefit that the helpful habits, you'll see that smoking becomes inconvenient aspect in your ecosystem, and you are much more prone to tackling it as opposed to if you were focused on quitting the habit in isolation of the other positive, meaningful goals. So hopefully that makes sense. And I'll just kind of like to outline for you some general steps in formulating meaningful goals. Because I don't know about you, but I'm good. I like formulas, and I like tell me what to do and I'll do it. Like I'm a rule follower, that's me. So just give me the structure, give me the plan, and I'll go. Give me my marching orders, if you would. So I'm just gonna list a few steps for you, if you're having any trouble structuring your goals, right? Okay. So first thing, you want to start with things that you naturally care about the most. Sounds simple, right? Not always, because if you're not sure what you're passionate about, sometimes you have to sit down and kind of think about the things that you are drawn to naturally. The reason for this is that it will help you maintain consistency when your motivation dwindles, and it will. Okay? Nobody is prone to motivation all the time. Everybody has dips, ebbs and flows in their motivation. And to be honest, motivation is actually on, the lower end. It's not the prominent feeling or emotion. Motivation comes in very small spurts, and I think of it as a reminder, why something's important to us, to help us push through 80% of the time that we're unsure of why we're doing what we're doing, at least in my experience. So it helps us maintain consistency. The next thing is to be sure to keep your expectations within reason. So you want to create goals that are challenging but doable. They're attainable. Okay, so not pie in the sky stuff, but things you can really finish. Finish what you start. It's really, really important. If you set goals that you can't finish, there's no evidence in your adequacy, which leads to low self-esteem and works against you. Okay, so set goals that you can pursue within your current means. That's the third thing. Set goals you can pursue within your current means. That includes your finances and your time, right? And your resources. Okay, really important, you want to set deadlines. This is crucial to avoid procrastination. Now, I'm the king of procrastination. Since as long as I can remember, if I don't have, some black and white, parameters on something, I'm going to put it off to the last minute and find something else to occupy myself. So it's really important to have some imposed deadlines so we don't give way to procrastination. And some people are better at this than others, but that's why I became a list guy, is because if I don't have a list, then I'm very out of sight, out of mind. So I need it in front of me. And to remember the consequences of not doing it, and to remember why something is important to me. Okay. And most audacious goals are accomplished in small, regular portions, right? It's not a one-shot thing. It's through consistency. For example, you can write a 200-page book inside of 6 months with only putting in 15 minutes. Or actually 2,000-page book, 500 words a day. So it doesn't, it's that putting in 15 minutes with a goal, right? Say I'm going to write 500 words. A day, I'm going to put in 15 minutes or whatever it is, and I'm just going to be consistent about it. And that's how we hit long-term goals. Next is the attention to detail, right? Concrete goals are sure to address the when, the where, and the how much and how often and with whom, okay? Learning how to fight depression comes down to specific and intentional behavior, all right? So you want to make sure, kind of remember those English class, who, when, where, how, why, right? It's kind of that. So you want to make sure you're hitting all of those when you're framing a goal. Next, you want to set goals that you can dictate or control. This is like super important. I think this may be the most important thing, right? We can't change other people. We know that. We can barely change ourselves. As a therapist, I believe in change, but let me tell you, personal change, habit change is, it's a tough thing to do. It's a tall order. So understand that we need to set goals that we have some control over, right? Some saying. This means limiting as many contingencies as possible, especially in relation to others. We have no control over how others operate, so do not give away your power to influence change in your life by setting up goals for yourself that are dependent on others for change, okay? Do not give your power away to influence change in your life by setting up yourself to be dependent on others to change. Meaning, don't wait for somebody else's change in behavior to make decisions in your own life. You'll be waiting a long time and you'll be very disappointed. Next, set goals for yourself, not for other people. Really important. I touched on this earlier. For what improves your quality of life, not because you are seeking acceptance from another person or because they tell you it's what you need to do. Listen to your wise mind and what you know you need to grow, right? Everybody has an opinion, and a lot of people may be giving you their opinion because they want to help, and they may think they have a pretty good idea of what you need, but ultimately you are the expert of your life. Only you know what you need in the end. Okay, next I want you to remember, when you follow through with the tasks that you have committed to, that you have made progress, regardless of the feedback others provide, especially when that advice or feedback is unsolicited. So when you set your own goals, the progress that you make is your progress. Own that. Take credit for it. Praise yourself for it. Reward yourself for it. It's really important. Okay? And I want you to practice the art of goal pacing. So this is, there's I could do a whole episode just on goal pacing, but really the whole idea here is breaking your larger goals down into digestible, traceable tasks. These miniature goals, if you would, require you to be methodical and that you are keeping them within your control. Progress is easier to identify when your goals are broken down into smaller tasks. It also makes it easier to find out if something doesn't go according to plan. You can reflect back on it and say, oh, you know what? Maybe it's because I didn't do that piece right there. Let me circle back to this thing and do this a little bit different. Because when you break your goals down into meaningful tasks, it's easier to analyze what went wrong if the outcome is not what you expected. And it's really important, on the same note, to understand that we need to focus on our actions. And this is really a point that I pull from James Clear in his book Atomic Habits. Great book if you've never read it. We have control of our actions, not the outcomes. So when you're focusing on your goal and you're deciding to feel a certain way about your progress, remember, you only have control over your actions, not the outcomes. So don't get too married to the outcomes. Just focus on what you have control over and your actions and what you can do differently if you need to. Okay. And understand that short-term goals generally have a 6-month lifespan or deadline and propel you towards more audacious ones. So short-term goals, a 6-month goal can be broken down into weekly steps, right? But that 6-month goal moves you closer to your 5-year goal. Follow me? Okay. And last thing, celebrate your achievements, please. However small they may seem to you in the moment, really important. Celebrate your achievements. Make them memorable. Take a picture of that certificate. Treat yourself to your favorite indulgence, if you just finished a task on your to-do list. Do things to commemorate those moments, because that solidifies it in your mind and the association and that reward system. Super important, okay? So that's kind of the formula. And how you're going to practice this is, I want you to start off by defining a long-term goal that improves your quality of life and speaks to your values. This is a goal that would take 1 to 5 years to accomplish. Next, I want you to define a short-term goal that can be accomplished in the next 6 months. That moves you closer to your long-term goal. And to do this, you need to commit to the when, the what, the how much, how often, and where. How is this going to take place? All right. So, just to recap, reflecting and acknowledging daily on what you are grateful for, having daily activities you enjoy around those values, and always having plans for your future all help to maintain a healthy mood. And working backwards from long-term goals helps to create meaningful short-term goals and activities and maintaining a sense of progress. This builds a stronger sense of self and will improve your mood, okay? Because your self-esteem is improving. And lastly, you want to set and achieve goals that are indispensable in a rhythm for creating a future that you want and how to fight depression. Rhythm, goal setting is a rhythm. It's trial and error, but it's also building automatic habits that allow you to sustain the activities around your goals. It's about being intentional. And as good old Tony Robbins would say, life is happening for you, not to you. Okay? Life is happening for you, not to you. All right? So that's all I have for now. Certainly, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, use the contact me page. I'm here for you. I want to create content that's meaningful for you. If you're ever in a mental health crisis, certainly use the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255, or you can text START to 741-741. If you need mental health referrals, you can call 1-800-950-6264. And California has a statewide mental health helpline, 1-855-845-7415. And although I am a licensed therapist, I am not your therapist, and this is meant for entertainment purposes and to edify you so you can live the best life you can. Okay, until next time, keep thriving, put into practice these skills we discuss, and I will be rolling out some more episodes quickly for you. Okay, and you take care. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening to the Mental Health Toolbox Podcast. Learn more at www.thementalhealthtoolbox.com.